My name is Troy Dreyer. I'm the Senior Associate Editor for streamingmedia.com and onlinevideo.net. And you're going to be glad you stayed because we have a fantastic panel we were very lucky to get who are going to talk about how old media is adapting to new media. And they'd better adapt because there's lots of new media who would love to take their place. Joining me on the panel, we have Richard Tanner, Senior Producer, Video for the New York Times, Jeff Friend, Vice President, General Manager, Web Content Management Group for Limelight Networks, Marco Parente, Senior Product Manager for Video for the Nielsen Company, and Darren Farrer, CEO of Conviva. I'm going to let them say a little bit about what they do and introduce themselves, and then we'll get into our discussion.
I'm Richard Tanner, as mentioned. I'm one of the two senior producers for video at the New York Times. We have, obviously, the primary distribution outlet for our video is NewYorkTimes.com. We've got a staff of almost 20, 15, or 17 video journalists in our unit, all creating unique content related to New York Times editorial products that's seen, obviously, all over the world. And output to not just the site, but obviously we're reaching out to mobile, iPad apps, iOS, Android, different platforms, hopefully over the top, things like that. But glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'm Jeff Friend with Limelight Networks. So I came to Limelight by way of acquisition. So I was the CEO of Clickability, which was a SaaS web content management platform. So we ran the platform on which our customers build and run their websites. And among those customers were many traditional media companies, so broadcasters, newspapers, and working with these folks over the last 7 years or so, really saw how their strategies changed, how they were incorporating social media, video, all the things that you think of as commonplace on websites today, as they figured out their way through these things. So great learning experiences. I think we've seen the full spectrum, the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of the experimentation there. And happy to share some of those insights and stories here today.
I am Marco Parente. I manage online video initiatives for Nielsen. So at a high level, what Nielsen does is essentially two major things. We measure what people watch and what people buy. And related to that, we develop tools and services that essentially help our clients answer questions, business questions, and also provide insights, particularly around the fragmented media space that we're seeing today that's growing. So how does Nielsen fit in the space? We have some of our clients sort of have this analogy about Nielsen, sort of as Nielsen as a parent. So you need your parent. You don't always agree with them, but you depend on them. You rely on them to help you solve questions or issues throughout your life. And similar to that, a lot of people rely on Nielsen to help with their business questions around media and consumption.
Hi everybody, I'm Darren Farrer. I run a company called Conviva. We're all about video. We do two things to make streaming businesses more profitable and viewers happier. We give viewers to watch longer by optimizing their streams. So think higher quality viewing, free from buffering, at higher resolutions, higher picture quality. And then we also provide real-time audience measurement that allows media businesses to make better decisions, everything from targeting to diagnostics to customer services. And our customers, when they work with us, we work with major media businesses, over 1 billion streams a month right now. We're improving, and they generally see audience lift from better quality viewing and better intelligence.
Terrific. Richard, as our representative of old media here, I'm going to ask you to carry a lot of weight in this. And since you come from the paper of record, I imagine the Times kind of had to be ahead of what a lot of papers were doing in new media and were looked to by regionals across the country for direction. When did the Times start with new media, and what did they do in the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think it was around '96, Martin Niesenholtz, who actually just announced his retirement from the company, and it was kind of fun. They just reprinted the first article of the New York Times, writing an article about us starting our website, and it was funny, kind of, talking about the World Wide Web and all that. But obviously, it started out actually. I mean, the New York Times really was old media. When they started out the digital venture, it was started in a parallel, kind of in its own silo in a different building. It was this web thing that we'll understand one day, but for the moment, you just stay over there, let us report and do what we do, and create a newspaper, which we still do. Anyway, over time it evolved, and I think there was one of the biggest kind of spikes was obviously 9/11, which was a huge event, and I think obviously for everyone it was an enormous traffic day, but I think it really kind of brought our website to the forefront, not only to our customers, but also to the organization, where reporters started realizing that wow, we got the news out in real time. They didn't wait until the next day, to read it in the paper. And another interesting driver, actually, that's been happening has been as we've been growing. First of all, we own the International Herald Tribune, which is based in Paris. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of our company. So we have a huge international expat community that reads the paper online and all that. Anyway, so basically, people, our foreign correspondents started realizing that's how they see the paper, is as a website, not as, they don't ever get the actual paper edition because it's not sent over there, or it is at great cost. So anyway, so it's been it's been an exponential growth curve. More pertinent to this conversation is video. And very quickly, we basically started. The Times had played around in video a little bit more in its documentary format back in the early 2000s. And in 2006, I actually joined in 2002. We had a venture, we kind of played around with traditional television media. We had the Discovery Times channel. Anyway, fast forward to 2006, we piloted what was called the Web Video Unit. And it basically, it started from 6 and now is up to 15. These are full staff in the newsroom. We did finally move into the actual New York Times building, which is nice. Part of the newsroom, creating original content that is it's highlighted right in the middle of the page, sometimes at the top of the homepage. We've seen really strong growth, and it's been the biggest thing I think that's been most interesting, coming from a very traditional old media company, was balancing new, experimental, interesting, sometimes failing in the newsroom where that is not expected at all. I mean, the Times, you get it right, you get it done on time. That's that's the paper of record. That's the way it is. And so I think one of the interesting lessons was, again, being given the latitude to kind of experiment and try different things that that match the editorial quality of our main product, the newspaper. And it's been a tough thing to balance, but I think we've managed to do that, and look forward to doing more of that in the future.
Perfect. Jeff, how does a paper, I don't know if anyone's still starting out, but how does a traditional media company go to creating their own video? What steps do they take?
Yeah, great question, because there are multiple paths here, and examples of people who have chosen different paths. I think Richard just mentioned the word quality. So that's something that is a starting point in thinking about how an approach to video is going to be taken. There's the idea that a newspaper producing high quality print content wants to be producing that high quality premium video content as well. So the path to get there is actually pretty expensive. It's hiring the right people to do video production. It may be building a mini production studio themselves. It may be having a news van for the newspaper to go out with the big antenna and all that kind of stuff too. So that's one route. Another route, which is really an interesting model, it can be seen with the Journal Register Company. So I'm not sure if folks are familiar with them. They're a conglomerate of probably about 170 titles, small town newspapers up. I think the New Haven Register is the biggest one. So they went through a big shift a couple years ago. It was one of these bankruptcy stories that were common in the newspaper market. And when they came out, had a new CEO, a new direction, digital first kind of business. And it was like the first week on the job, the CEO had flip cameras sent out to all the journalists, all the reporters. So now the print reporters were responsible for video. They were on the spot already. They had something easy they could take video with. They built the systems to allow that to be kind of efficiently aggregated together. Obviously not the same type of video, not the same quality of video from the full production side. And the third approach would actually be you think about user-generated video, as a starting point. To capture the things that no traditional news reporter is going to see. The moments after an accident, to pick a morbid example, or the multiple angles and shots at weather events and things like that. So those are the different routes we've seen taken. People have started with chosen paths and switch course and so on. But it's a really big question, particularly for an organization that isn't geared to do video from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's clearly a lot of adapting in what we're talking about here. And this space is becoming so fragmented. That's what we're hearing in all our panels with the different devices. Marco, what kind of difficulty does that present, the fragmentation in measuring just what is going on and how much is being viewed and how's old media getting up to speed on that?
It's easy, right?
Yeah, of course, right. No, it's a huge problem, and our clients, essentially what our clients are asking for is the ability to plan a media plan and look at their audience across all of these different platforms. And right now the challenge is you have not only different firms that are measuring, but you also have different measurement techniques and methodologies for each different platform. So it's very difficult to know that if I'm watching a video on Hulu, online, I'm watching it on my mobile phone, I'm watching it on an over-the-top device, it's very difficult to know that's the actual same person watching it. And just to compound that, you have things like this cookie-based measurements. You have things like private browsing, where your cookies are erased after every session. So what this means is that one user, if you're looking at cookie-based measurement, which a lot of analytics do today, you could have one user that represents hundreds of cookies. So it's very difficult to look at that cookie count and try to relate that back to an individual person. So this is a challenge that we're taking on as Nielsen and a huge initiative going forward.
Mm-hmm. Are you responsible, Richard, for measurement at times? Are you involved
No,
in that?
I'm not on the product side. I'm on the editorial side, but we do have analytics people, and they find this challenging. And again, we are a victim of fragmentation as well. I mean, we want to be everywhere. We want to be where you are, where the customer is, and it's advertisers want to know, and yeah.
So Darren, I'm seeing that even though it's been a kind of short time that old media has been adapting, that we've already gone through a few different waves of business models as they try different things. What have you seen? What have they tried out? And what's worked and where are they now?
Yeah, so I probably should have said this at the beginning, but so I run Conviva, which I'm having a ball doing, but before that I spent 7 years at NBC Universal. And I ran broadcast engineering and production facilities and all that. So I've lived through the promise of convergence from old to new, which actually has been an incredibly long time in coming for a while. I guess the good news is that right now, actually, I think there's one big realization that makes it real exciting, and it's that I think old media is finally realizing it can't just be an appendage. And if it's an appendage, then one, the business models are fragmented. It doesn't generate real true operating profit back to the parent. You've got all these duplicative processes, editorially content processing, and so. What we see is that the media businesses, great content brands are finally getting serious about looking at this as a holistic business, and that touches all functions, and that's bringing efficiency into the model, which I think will help it grow. On the business model side, I would say that at least from where we see, where we, like I said, work with a lot of brands, and we see a lot of viewing patterns now across the internet. I think the big shift we're seeing is first wave of the video internet, really was replicating, ad-supported models in television and, with the exception of long form in a lot of ways, but such a push now to, subscription models, whether it be an extension because of TV everywhere or whether it be direct subscription services. And our view of that is just that, when consumers were not sure when they were experimenting and they hadn't really formed life behavior patterns around where they're going to spend their time, they'll try lots of different things. But once that settles down, then you demand high quality. You want to take all the noise out of the channel as much as possible, and you're willing to pay for it. And so we see that shift happening, pretty much on every one of our customers, and they're experimenting with, hybrid models or just migrating to what I think is a more lifetime customer value look at their viewers on digital platforms. Again, there's lots of different influences, but that seems to be the outcome that we see.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really interesting point there, which is the appendage or completely inside the organization. Yeah. That may be a simple thing from like a balance sheet perspective, but real cultural issues with getting there. We had observed customers, kind of going both ways with this. So actually starting with it as part of the same organization, deciding that culturally what was needed to be innovative and strategic, online with new media, with multimedia, was inherently different DNA than was in the current newsroom, was in the current editorial processes. Actually moved them out of the building, built them a Web 2.0 kind of office, and then 2 years later, it just came back full circle and brought them right back in. So, I think you can't stress the cultural shifts that also go along with things like adopting new multimedia, adopting video as a print organization, adopting online as a broadcaster and getting your video on your website and so on.
Yeah, I think you're right on the production side for sure. I think also, Mark, on the measurability side too. We, for years, major studios were fundamentally wholesale licensing businesses. Right? The internet has been this great equalizer. It says you have to measure everything and know how to optimize it, and have real-time feedback in order to eke out every bit of profit. That changes the dynamic dramatically. So we see that. I see it permeating every part of the business.
Yeah.
And we're definitely just to add one thing we find very challenging, which you're just mentioning, is obviously we see the gross numbers that come out. When are people on our site? Who's clicking through to the video? Who's watching it? Sometimes geographically, but a huge thing is, what do they want? In other words, as you're saying, like looking at the customer as a whole, are we creating content for a lean back experience? Is it a mobile experience? And as an editorial product, you don't always know. I mean, we need to make the journalism has to be the same, right? We have to deliver reporting, current reporting, in a timely fashion. But where are they going to catch us? Are they going to have time to watch a 3-minute report? Is it a news update that's a 20-second, push onto a mobile device, or do they want to sit in front of their Apple TV or one of their media boxes? And I sometimes watch. We have one of our current editorial products is something called Timescast, which is a Monday through Friday show. It's about 5 to 7 minutes. It releases. We just moved it from 4 to 1, more traffic. And it's funny, sometimes I'll go, I watch it during the day when we're producing it, and then I'll sometimes go home and watch it on my Apple TV. And sometimes it's actually pretty good, but it's such a different experience, and trying to figure out, where to apply these different, where to apply the programming, how to monetize it, and where to monetize it it's a huge challenge,
A few minutes
Our
ago.
view is not everyone knows the answer to that yet, but what the businesses that win will sort of, have to have a viewer side position. You got to be able to, have some instrumentation point where you can know in real time, right? And the ability to constantly adjust. And we're betting our business on that, first for quality of streaming, but then for all kinds of analytics. But regardless of that, I think the ones who win have to be able to experiment. You can't do that without guessing what the audience thought a day later. That doesn't work. And you have to be able to pivot and adapt. And so it's almost like you're building adaptable businesses where traditional media businesses were not so. Very traditional media cycle, sales cycles were traditional. And that is at the core why it's not evolutionary. Change, in my opinion.
A few minutes ago, Darren mentioned subscriptions, experiment a lot of places have done. I'm sure Richard agrees with me that news should be free. That there is no call for subscriptions on news websites. No, speaking of experiments, the Times has done a lot of experimenting with how to monetize their subscribers. And right now, you guys have a subscription plan.
We do.
And what other kinds of experimentations have you done in just terms of how you gather the news?
Well, what's interesting is people think obviously I guess it was this spring when we launched the new digital access plan, which includes the site, includes mobile, different kind of blends, and there was a lot of the FT had already gone there, the Journal had gone there in some different ways, and people were kind of waiting for the Times. Where does their shoe drop? And it's public. It's public data. I think it was filed that we've actually done really well. It's been a great take up and all that. But the interesting thing is we actually did try this. It shows you kind of the maturation of the market. We tried it I think it was in 2005, we did something called Time Select. And that was our first kind of walled garden where we basically, and what we did was we put, and again, this is a business side initiative, I wasn't involved with it directly, I created content to try to make it more attractive. But we basically put what we thought was one of our most valuable things, which was our columnists behind a paywall. And it was very early and also well documented, not very successful, and we did pull back from that initiative. But I think that the numbers prove that, and not just us, but other large media organizations, people do value that content. they value it, they want it in different places. In other words, they are buying the plan that the different plans that gives you access to the site as well as to the mobile devices, and that the market has changed in the past 4 or 5 years. So, we've learned a lot from that. And one interesting thing just related to this conference, and this is kind of anecdotal, but I recently moved and I'm in a commuting area in New York, and someone said, "Oh, you work for the New York Times, you do video?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "I love your app, it's great, but I've stopped watching video because I don't want to blow through my bandwidth cap." And I kind of gulped and said, "Here's another challenge for online video and all that with the caps coming down." So they paid for our product. We're very happy about that, but then we can't give it to them enough because then they're limited in a different way. So it's just kind of one of those odd business kind of things to think about. So hopefully someone out there is thinking about this. But anyway, it's been a good experiment so far.
So when you said Time Select had failed, but now you guys have gone with a total paywall, is the difference time that people are more willing to pay a few years later?
I don't know. I can't comment on that. And it's not a total paywall. You are allowed in and to sample and sniff around. And obviously there are lots of ways that are very well documented that people can kind of sneak in through different ways. But I don't know. I mean, well, no. I mean, obviously through certain search engines, I know that our competitors at Dow Jones were very unhappy with how people were getting to the journal site. But there are ways that can be gamed. I think the average user just, if you really want it, we're going to stop you after 20 or 10 or 20 views, pay. And I do think that people are realizing, they are starting to value premium content. I mean, as the amount of content on the web just explodes, video, print, text, there is a premium for quality content. People still want, from large publishers that they trust, content, and so far, they are willing to pay for it. We'll know over obviously the longer scope in the future how many people, like if we hit just like a core audience that of course they want it and they would pay for it. Are they business subscribers whose companies are paying for it, or are they everyday people that just want it? And I guess time will tell. But it is it has been successful so far.
So I would actually add one thing onto that too. It's the quality content, and it can actually be the unique content. So a customer of ours is the Minneapolis Star Tribune. Obviously they publish a wide range of global, local, national news, and where they started their paywall initiative was actually on their Vikings coverage. Right? So they were the only major newspaper covering the Vikings. High quality content, unique content. So that's where they started their paywall project. And recently have spread it across more of the site. But it's really starting with that unique niche content. Just around the Vikings.
Like
just around the Vikings to start with.
It was like us around our columnist many years ago. Yeah.
Well, I know.
I think also that it's really important, the order and the way in which you roll these things out. I think it makes a huge a difference with the internet consumer, and just that there's a feeling still of choice and opting in and packaging and modularity. And it wasn't exactly a paywall subscription thing, but when I was still at NBC, we did NBCOlympics.com, and we had to put some authentication on there. We did it all at once, bang, had a dramatic effect on viewers as opposed to over a period of months opting in. And I think that, again, that's another point about the mindset shift between maybe traditional media, which, okay, this is a new business model, okay, put a wall on day one, as opposed to letting people slowly opt in, and just a different way to think for the internet consumer. And I think where you do that well, you get actually not only higher take-up, but you actually can get better price too.
The other thing that relates to this also that's interesting is that as old media companies move to more new media platforms, traditional deals don't necessarily take it, when it comes to, rights and clearances and all that. The BBC's been facing this as like their audience is going overseas, but that's another thing, like negotiating for, the internet is a very different platform, and, a lot of rights and clearances have to be taken into account that are more expensive, and are you really getting the international, you can't hive off your international consumers, so it just creates another issue for a traditional old media company where the New York Times, if they had a photo or whatever it was being seen in the United States, and that's it. But now with the internet, it creates some other issues. Minor, but something to think about.
Jeff, question for you. As old media gathers news, gathers video, gathers content for news distribution, they don't all have to create all their own work, right? There's something called the rule of thirds for content.
Yeah. This is this is an idea that emerged in the newspaper market. So I guess I'm kind of on Richard's team here in terms of old media. But this was the part of the solution to the challenge that newspapers have had over the last several years, which is financial, and one of their biggest expenses is the creation of content. So more pressure put on to deliver more results, to be publishing across more and more channels, but with fewer resources to do it from the editorial side. And the practices that have evolved for that is to think about the rule of thirds. So the idea is that a third of the content that you're publishing, particularly online, is owned and created internally. And this is usually going to focus again on that more unique content. So the local content, not just recovering kind of national news or global news. A third of it's going to be contributed. So contributed from trusted sources in the community. So going out, finding those local bloggers, kind of approving them for essentially being published through the brand, through the paper's brand. And then the last third is really about aggregation. So finding other content out there in the blogosphere, on syndicated news and so on, that provides additional commentary, additional voice to the topics being covered. So it's a way of really focusing that internal content creating group on what's most important in the community for them to be focusing on, adding additional trusted sources, and then really enriching it with the rest of the content out there.
Marco, there must be a huge difference in how younger people and older people consume news. What are you seeing?
Well, when you look at sort of how people are consuming media across TV, internet, online, you do see a general trend where sort of the younger the medium, so newer technologies like mobile and online, do tend to skew toward younger. You have younger demographic that are actually spending more time watching online video and mobile video. Whereas with TV, the demographic that's spending the most time is actually creeped up a bit, where it's 50 plus that are actually spending the most time. Whereas online you have between maybe 18 and 49, which was the traditional sort of TV demographic, and mobile even goes a little bit lower. I think it's like 12 to 17 is actually spending the most time. Now that said, there's still a lot of people watching TV. I mean, when you look at, on average per day, if you look at the total US population, you have almost 5 hours a day of TV viewing. And then when you drop down to online, it goes to 4 minutes per day. And mobile is 1 minute. This is for the average US population. It goes up a bit if you look at just people that access video every month. They're spending about 4 hours a month, or 9 minutes a day. And with TV, it's still about around that 5 hour. One trend we are seeing is actually the people that are streaming the most are actually watching less TV. And it's vice versa, so people that are streaming the least are actually watching more TV. Now that said, they're still watching, I think, 13 times more TV than online video. But we have seen this trend in the last maybe 2 quarters.
Can you tell us about synchronous usage of doing both at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, one unique thing that we have, at Nielsen, we have a world-class panel. It's our TV panel. I mean, this panel is very highly maintained. We have field reps that are, family friends with our panelists. They go in for birthdays. They're checking to make sure all the equipment is working. And very expensive panel, but it's sort of the gold standard, for the world. And what we've done in the last few years is we've actually added internet measurement. We call this our single source panel. So we actually are able to look at the interaction between what people are doing on TV and what they're doing online. And essentially what that gives you, it tells you simultaneous usage. So you could look in and say, for example, as somebody's watching a TV program, what are they actually searching for on Google? And you could, run studies and analyses. You get look at things like cause and effect. So if you're, you put an ad for an NBC program online, and you want to see if that person actually watched the NBC program, I mean, you can do that in this type of panel. So it's really the only way you can look at sort of cause and effect.
Terrific. So I imagine that, Darren, did you want to add something?
Well, I was going to say something maybe a little controversial in that
Please.
I think the idea of the panel is good, but one of the beautiful things about the internet is you don't have to do it through sampling. You should be able to measure every single viewer you have and know intimately what they're going to watch and what they're not. And I think that some of those trends are actually different when you broaden the net of what you can actually see. And that's a cool thing on the internet. And you guys are working on that stuff too.
Yeah,
but
no, there is a benefit to using census-based measurement. think there's benefits to both. I mean, with the panel, you're getting demographics and you're getting uniques, which again, like I mentioned earlier, it's difficult to try to relate a unique back to a cookie. And that problem's just getting worse with policy litigation. So there's all this, policies out there that prohibit companies from tracking users via cookies. And in some countries, it's, there's litigation going on, and it's getting really crazy. There's things like browsers are just making it very easy for users to browse privately. So every time you close your browser, it's erasing all your cookies. So it's very difficult for those cookies to persist today. And we think that going forward in the future, it's going to become even more problematic. So what we've done at Nielsen is we have essentially a hybrid methodology that is panel-centric. So we still rely on our panel for uniques and demographic composition, but we also take in census data to help inform those projections. We work with partners like Facebook, leveraging their registered user activity to help inform those panel estimates.
Unexpected. Analytics Smackdown. I think we should do a session on old way, new way of analytics.
Well, I think this this dependency between the traditional channel and the internet channel is really interesting. And two, just again, I've kind of got all the stories, but two quick anecdotes about that. So the first was actually the last presidential election. So record day for most of our media websites for their traffic, maybe 50% over previous peaks. And watching the traffic, across all of our media customers, through the day, it's going up and kind of flat through the evening. And as soon as Obama took the stage for his victory speech, the traffic just went like this. It dropped about 20% until the end of the speech, and then right back up. So clearly something happened there in the dynamic of the people watching TV stopped surfing the internet. So I'm really curious next time around to see how this has changed, with tablets and everything else. And then the second anecdote is actually, what happens when that traditional channel actually goes offline. And so one of our customers is a TV station in San Diego, and there's some wildfires down there a couple of years ago, which actually took out all the power in the area where their station was. So their station actually went off air for an extended period of time while the fires were down there. So the internet became the only way that they were now able to broadcast the news, and broadcast the video that they were collecting, update the news, get all the public service announcements out, the evacuation routes, and so on. 10 times as much traffic through that period as any other time in that station's history. So very strong dynamic there between these multiple channels.
Yeah, just to add something. We've been kind of experimenting, obviously, in different ways and kind of embracing new media, embracing old media, and things we don't have rights to. And so one thing that we did, we've done with the Oscars, and we did it with politics, but it's basically using a second screen experience. So in other words, this thing was, I thought it worked out very well. But basically during the Oscars, obviously one of the most protected, trademark things, you can't get close to it. But we have great critics, and we have interesting commentary. So what we came up with was, obviously we're not going to stream the Oscars, obviously, but we had basically a second screen experience, and we set up a studio in our newsroom, and we had A.O. Scott, Tony Scott, who's our chief movie critic, and David Carr, a media columnist, who many of you probably know, and had them sit down, and we produced a show, and we had a cookie in the second screen browser, and as soon as the commercial came on, we'd go live, and they would then comment for the duration of the commercial. And as we all know with the Oscars, there are a lot of commercials. But actually, it was really, really successful. And that's kind of a way for, I guess, for old and new media to embrace other media and to kind of, not to just cede to television for that drop-off you guys were just mentioning, but embrace it and just think of creative ways to add value to it and, to be honest, to monetize it.
So just when traditional media got used to collecting video for the web, now we have the new world of apps and mobile devices. What has traditional media had to learn? Who wants to take it?
Well, I think, again, I can comment on, the different approaches we've seen. One approach really has been, the replicate what's happening online, through an app on the tablet. So, have news-driven, applications. Kind of check the box that now you have an app and you're delivering content there. Other folks have taken a different approach, more innovative approach. Freedom Communications is a company that owns a bunch of newspapers and some broadcasters as well. And Doug Bennett's I think he's the president on the interactive side. And he likes to call it, finding the purple cow. And the purple cow is, that unique, that eye-catching, that innovative component to what they're doing. So for them, it's not about figuring out how to get the news, through into an iPad app. They could have done that easily. It was thinking, thinking what's the, what is that purple cow? What's the thing that they can do differently that will get people using their iPad app, while still, fulfilling their primary function as an organization, which is delivering content and delivering news about the community. So that's two approaches we've seen. Certainly the apps also present an opportunity for creating rich, blended experiences. Philly.com, again, a customer of ours, great example of an iPad app, which was about baseball. It's about the Phillies. So what they used was it blended the news content and the columns from the sports writers with their multimedia assets, so photos and videos and real-time sports data from another, from a data source. I blended that on the iPad app, so it created a very rich, dynamic, assemblage of content and information right there for their Phillies fans.
And what we're seeing is, I mentioned earlier with our single source panel, we're able to measure what people are doing as they're watching TV, and a large portion of people are either on their phones or on their computers as they're watching TV. And I think there's a huge opportunity there to essentially to sync up what people are doing on these other devices while they're watching TV. So there are tools out there and apps out there that will actually synchronize. They'll pick up a code, our Nielsen watermark code from the TV program you're watching, and know exactly what program you're watching and at what point in the program you are. So whether it's in a particular commercial or it's a particular section of the episode. And it does this in real time, and as you're watching the show, it will actually synchronize with the TV program and provide additional information, whether that's additional information about a particular advertiser that you saw or ad that you saw on the TV, to get additional information about the program or cast. So it's a lot of stuff people are already doing, but it's sort of sponsored by the particular content owner or publisher. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there to create some affinity for the brand and also a lot of advertising opportunities.
Richard, are you involved with the Times News app?
Not directly, not in the development way. My unit supplies content for it, but I'm actually not part of the development team. No.
So do you know at all what changes they've made or what they've learned?
Well, obviously the app has evolved, and I think another revision's coming out soon. I don't know. I know there is, it has been talk about specialization, and then there are always questions with apps. Like in other words, I was just talking about that second screen app. Should that be HTML based, or should that be an app itself? Should we force people to go to download an app, or make it easy and just present it on the web in HTML? So beyond, I know those are some of the discussions. Apps are obviously interesting, but there always is that barrier to getting that app. And obviously you assume, well, of course you will, it's an app, you just go download it. But to a lot of people, that's another barrier. And when you click on, nytimes.com, and it could either automatically format or have a cookie that could push video content to you, it just kind of depends.
Marco, are you able to get predictive with your data and tell us how we'll be consuming news 10, 15 years in the future? Will there always be a 6 o'clock news broadcast? I've never even watched it. Will there always be newspapers? And how,
yes.
how will we be informed? Print newspapers, I mean.
Well, that's anybody's guess.
What kind of trends are you seeing?
We track actual usage online.
Are you seeing trends toward a certain kind of thing where in the future we'll be getting our news much more in a certain way?
Well, I think if you look at sort of the demographic shift that I mentioned earlier, it could be something where it's sort of a life stage thing, like Darren mentioned, where you have a younger demographic is more sort of an early adopter. I'm not sure if that's true. The other trend could be that we have a younger demographic today accessing news and other content through online and mobile, and then as that demographic gets older, you're going to see, that's going to be part of the shift that you're going to see towards, online media. So I don't think necessarily that a linear model is going to go away. I think it's just going to be more flexible in the sense that you'll be able to access it, across multiple devices, basically anytime you want. So there's a huge shift in this time shifting. So we're seeing this across the board. In the last year, we're seeing an increase with people that have DVRs in their homes, and also seeing an increase about I believe about an hour. So people watching time-shifted viewing on their TV over an hour from what we saw last year. And with just regular linear TV, we're actually seeing increases for 2 hours. So we're seeing increase across the board on this sort of anytime video. And I think if that continues, we're going to start seeing, it's more natural. I guess it makes sense that people would be consuming their news through this sort of time-shifted system.
Darren, one more for you. As they get more into video, what have traditional organizations had to learn about delivering quality video, about delivering an experience that people want to be a part of?
Well, I think online and unconnected platforms, delivering large-scale simultaneous audiences over IP is just a fundamentally different problem than what you had in broadcast. You don't have the things that you had there, like multicast, for instance, or time code, or all the things that were great in television. And so I think that as now audiences are really amassing, and I agree with you, it's still early, but the growth rates are very, very large, then I think what major brands are realizing is that the networks that are a piece of the puzzle, the content publishing pipelines, there's a lot of things that actually can go wrong in that chain, and there's a lot, and that scale is a function not of, on average, are all these things getting better, but when you press play, what's at that exact moment, and that it's a fluid environment in terms of delivering video. And so, again, at least for my company, that's why we believe that you have to be able to real-time adjust. And we see right now, when we first start working with media brands, that about 20% of their streams are actually what we call quality impacted, meaning there's some kind of unoptimized situation, either they're buffering, stuttering, or they could sustain a higher resolution than what is actually being streamed to them. So it's a pretty big percentage. And then if you just look at the viewers who are impacted, and you look at how long they watch versus the viewers who have a clean, higher res, uninterrupted experience, people who have a clean experience watch twice as long. And we see that now across a broad data set. So, and the only way to squeeze out and make that more consistent across your whole audience base in terms of the average resolution, or save those viewers from what they hate, interruptions, that large percentage, is to have the ability to real-time adjust to the variations that are inherent in the IP internet. And so that can mean across delivery networks, whether that be telco, your origins, CDNs, whatever, or adjust in your player based on what's happening on your device, your home network locally. Usually for us, throttling bitrate is a way to deal with that. Or on the content publishing pipeline, knowing instantly when, for example, there's a lag from when that video finished encoding and when the metadata is sitting in the video player and someone presses play. If that's 10 seconds long, you just lost all those viewers. So I think the level of optimization that is inherent in being able to do this at the scale, when you get over the 1 million concurrent viewer mark, there's just a lot more complexity than what most people realize, and it's only getting more. And so, all solvable, but I think that's a big lesson learned. And if you don't anticipate that, then you usually don't have the result when you launch these businesses that you want.
Can I ask just one question? And you seem to have a lot of expertise in this. I remember a few years ago, there was a lot being written about that the current architecture of the internet just could not handle the kind of scaling of video that you're talking about. Has that changed, or are there ways that are being done under the current framework that can, as you say, optimize, or does there have to be a revolution, or what's your take on that?
So our belief is that you can't do it using the old approach. Okay, so and the old approach was, if you talk about delivering scale on the internet, let's say before the video internet, right? So in the first iteration of the internet, you're talking about small objects, static content, a lot of cacheability, and just large distributed cache networks were able to achieve a certain level of scale. Stateful live video, large object, different problem. And so there's some scale elements that are not optimized right now today. And then you also have the last mile issue. You have wireless networks, mobile devices, the fragmentation there. So our view is that today, the only way to achieve it is to have constant adjustment, constant optimization. Well, there's really sort of three things. One, you can't be doing it from the center of the network. So you can't just try and fire a stream out there and hope they get it. You've got to have a viewer-centric position, one thing. I mean, so you have to have some ability to see what the viewer actually sees on their screen and then react to that. You've got to have constant adjustment because, for the things either distribution issues or local issues. And the third thing, we touched on a little bit with your example on the wildfires, is you have to have a sense of not just the individual viewer, but the total audience and how that's happening simultaneously. And so when there's a pattern that happens across a large number of users in a localized area, you got to react differently than if it's just you. So for example, you may have a high-speed internet. I mean, we have one of our great customers is ESPN, and they, because of their live sports, right? Oftentimes they'll see a problem in a particular city that may not have an on-air game. People flock to the internet, and all of a sudden we see local saturation on the 5 servicing ISPs. Well, you may have a high-speed internet connection to your home. If you get high definition and you choke that last mile, then everyone else doesn't want. And so to have real-time intelligence to say, no, the best decision is to give everybody 1 bit rate at that moment in time so everybody watches. You got to have that kind of intelligence. There's lots of examples, corporate networks. But so anyway, I think my point is just that as the scale is coming, so the 200 hours of media consumption that is going to eventually come to IP, whether it's in your TV or whether it's in your browser, it's irrelevant. It's over an internet protocol delivered network. That tidal wave requires a different approach, a different level of sophistication. Our view is 3 things: viewer-centric, control, total constant optimization, not just at the beginning of that connection, because during the life of your session, you need to be optimized, and then a view of the total audience. So anyway, that's our look at it.
Terrific. With that, I would like to turn the questions over to the audience. I'm hoping you all have some things that you would like to ask our panelists, some specifics maybe from your own organizations. Okay, Jose, we have one up here. Wait for the microphone, so everybody can hear you.
Marco, I know Nielsen publishes both business-to-business publications in traditional print and also consumer. Is there a different business model in reaching those 2 different audiences that you use for your video?
What were the 2 you referenced? I'm sorry.
Is there a difference between what used to be traditionally consumer publication and business-to-business publication? As an example, Nielsen published a number of magazines that were trade magazines. Is that a different approach you use as your business model for, say, monetization for that audience that you're trying to reach as compared on your internet video as compared to a consumer audience for your consumer magazines?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk mostly about our media, so TV and online. And, as far as that audience goes, we do see a lot of overlap, between initiatives. I mean, we have most of the largest, all the largest broadcaster, as clients. The business objectives we hear from those clients is pretty similar across online and TV. I guess it depends also on, web publishers, we have video ad networks, they're looking to demonstrate the value of advertising online. And so, some of the studies that we're doing are actually trying to fuse our online data with our TV data. So we could look at, what happens if you have a campaign on TV. There is a point where you get to a certain saturation level. So if you're trying to reach a certain demographic through a TV campaign, you do get to a point where incremental spend does not necessarily lead to incremental reach. So what the business case they're trying to make to the TV side to get some of that ad revenue is that we'll take that incremental revenue that you're not going to get any incremental reach on TV and move that online and get some incremental reach that way. So they're not going in and saying, we're going to replace TV dollars or we're trying to steal TV dollars away. It's mostly incremental, and they're trying to get some data, working with us to get data to show that there's a surplus spend, you should move it online to increase your total campaign reach.
Perfect. Do we have another? Anyone? Hands? Okay.
Hi, my name is Andy Huang from Concurrent. I have a question for Michael of Nielsen. We're talking about doing audience viewing, the data collection, and in the new media where a lot of technology moved to the HTTP streaming, and especially HTTP ABR, where that each TCP request is for a chunk. So I'm wondering whether how do you solve the issue about whether an audience, a viewer who finish a session, starting from when and when to finish a session, when he pause and kind of really per viewer, the statistics, and how do you solve this issue in the new technology world?
Yep.
Okay,
I mean, we have logic to know that. So just so everybody knows, so adaptive streaming, what happens is you have a large video file, and you break it up into small little pieces, and you have several different quality versions of the video file. And as the person's watching, and Darren talked a little bit about this, if their network connectivity drops, the delivery of those different pieces will adjust dynamically so that we try to eliminate any kind of buffering. So the quality level of the video will go down as your network availability goes down, but the whole point is we're not going to give you any buffering, because that totally annoys users. They would rather see it, the quality go down rather than just sit there and wait for it to buffer. So we have a logic in place. So what happens is you're getting these little pieces of the file. They're being delivered every 2 seconds, and it looks like a new stream is actually being requested by the end user. So we have logic that will actually tie together these streams. So for one video delivery, you might have hundreds of different little stream requests that are happening. But we have logic that will tie together, and we'll take those 100 different streams and know that it's related to one particular video. And then with regard to duration, that's another thing that is difficult to do outside of a panel, because we actually are measuring the audio that's occurring on the machine. So if buffering does occur, the audio will stop on the person's machine, and we'll know that we won't count that into the duration metric. With census-based measurements, you're relying primarily on tags, and you don't have the benefit of checking that audio. And you have things like, some publishers are putting these video ads under the fold, so underneath the viewable portion of the screen, and they might have no audio on there. And if they're firing a tag, that's going to be counted as activity. So we have these audio checks in place to make sure we're not crediting that type of activity.
So we obviously are in this business too, and I agree with you. Tags don't work, certainly not in video, especially if they're static and you have to change them all the time, and for lots of reasons he said. Our approach is a little bit different. We literally instrument the media element that renders in your screen, and we actually pull statistics off of what the viewer is actually watching. And we do that with out-of-band heartbeats that are constantly processing, so that and that's how we handle the situation of whether independent of format. So if you're doing some video that happens to be HTTP chunking, some RTMP streaming, so we can sew that all together and give you one view of the view in real time. So we take, but that requires a little bit more integration in the video player to see that.
But I mean, the tagging is, with, for example, encrypted streaming or RTMPE, that presents a challenge because you don't have visibility into the URL information. So in that case, tagging makes a lot of, you really need tagging to do that. And we have both approaches. We actually, for most publishers, we're collecting two pieces of information. We're collecting URL level and tag level. And so we really have the best sort of both worlds there.
Does anyone in the back have a question? So Jose has to run? Anyone? No? All right, one over here. Quickly, we don't have much time. Okay. Make it good. I think this will be our last one.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about access to your premium content across multiple platforms. Specifically, the New York Times is charging on a per platform basis. You buy specifically access to the NewYorkTimes.com or the iPad app or the iPhone app, whereas the BostonGlobe.com is a really nice responsive design that if you buy or have access to it, it's going to work across all of your devices. And if you see basically it sounds like you got two different experiments going on, and which one is winning, or are you guys going to do both? Are you going to have a responsive NewYorkTimes.com and mobile apps for the globe, or will?
Yeah, I mean, to be very honest, again, as I said earlier, I'm actually not on the business side. I'm on the editorial side. I mean, I can just talk about as someone who works there. I mean, one thing that is true, though, I mean, the Times, and we own the Globe. For the people who don't know, we own the Boston Globe, and they have taken different approaches, and also have very different markets too. I mean, the Times is more of a national and global brand, but I think that we do offer. I mean, I think that the Times offering, and I want to be careful here because I'm not too familiar with the global one, but it is flexible. In other words, you are given an opportunity to subscribe. It's a la carte, or you can bundle it into. It's a la carte, or there's a discount if you bundle all three. So, I mean, there is that flexibility there. I mean, I guess it forces you to make that decision. But what I had heard through the grapevine, again, is that people wanted that choice, and not everyone necessarily wanted an iOS app or something like that. But all I can speak to is the numbers, which again are in the public realm and have been very strong for the New York. And there are obviously, as with every subscription model, there are ways around it. I mean, like for instance, and it's pretty widely known. Like if you are in a home delivery area and you subscribe to the Weekender, which is just the smallest print bundle, you then get free print. You get free online. So I mean, all these models have holes in them. But the Times, I think, is pretty confident with what we've done. And I really can't comment on the Globe, even though they are, another organization with ours. But it's been successful and it's working. And I have to say, I think for the whole publishing industry, or the whole media industry, I think it's not just for us, really encouraging to see that people will pay for premium content. I can't say they're necessarily coming for our video. I'd like to say that. And I think we are a very important part of that package. But people are paying, and the number of people are growing, and I think that's great, and it speaks well to the future of online media and video.
Yeah, I think just to add to that a little bit, we work with a range of different publishers, and it's still pretty early on in paywalls and subscription models and so on, and it's still a lot of experimentation. And it's also being thought of as part of the overall business strategy as well. So I've heard about the paywall, the online paywall strategy, and interlinked with the apps too. As part of a larger consideration about revenue replacement as print subscriptions stop and more people are consuming online or digitally. So really it's the holistic thinking that is driving a lot of the seemingly tactical decisions today about how paywalls and subscription models are implemented.
And the other, just to add very quickly, the other interesting dilemma, but issue that's coming to the forefront right now, of course, also is the whole thing with, say, with iOS apps, the rev share, the Apple's walled garden, and I can't, we're obviously part of it, but in-app subscriptions, owning that relationship, one publisher, I can't remember who it was, someone else might, but one paper just pulled out and is really pushing there. Just look at our HTML page. You don't need an app. We're here for you. So there are other, even moving towards tablets and subscription models. There are questions within that as well that are coming up that are contentious and interesting.
And with that, thank you to our panelists for a really great discussion, and thank you to all of you for making Streaming Media West 2011 a success. And it is over. Bye, everybody.